It's 8 a.m. and we're at the intersection since 2020. Oh my gosh, thinking about that, I just can't believe how much has happened, right? In these last 6 years. It's just startling sometimes. But it's also on the other side of the same coin, how we're working together is also increasing. So, those opposite sides, same coin, whatever. It might be very complex looking and complicated, but at the same time, so much is happening that brings people together. So um, I just keep saying it's part of the evolutionary process, and I'm not an expert on evolution by any means. But anyway, a few announcements to begin. Um, this past early week, actually, I go back further. Last week, we started this series on resistance with reason in San Antonio and reason. And we're going to continue that. We haven't quite figured out how long yet, but we're working on it. It's going to be good. We had a roundtable that was on telling our stories with some traction and impact. We witnessed actually in the intersection last week how our stories, this story here, mine, our inner story, how it not only fuels our work forward, but it, as humans, and in the research, it shows that then out of that comes structure and organization, governance. We start to, as humans, start to process that. And so we looked at that at the roundtable in the afternoon. Early this week was the Summer Institute at Oblate that looked very deeply at the spiritual faith component of mental health. And I've got an idea about utilizing those recordings as an actual class somehow. And I haven't even talked to Antonio about it, but I'm hoping that more of us can experience that down the road. And so today, Billy, could you bring on screen? I don't know if this went out with yesterday's e-notification, but if it didn't, we're going to make sure that it does. But out of last week in that structuring, um, people wanted to know more about what Bear Can looks like, how it's being structured and governed. So I don't know, Billy, if you can zoom in on all of that. But basically, Susan Price, who was with us, she's with Firecat Studios, she took the information from last week and she put it into this one pager. And you'll see in this one pager, what we are. It's a telling of story in one page, right? And she's also defining that structure, the core principles. You'll see it says draft because this new collaborative, fairly new, we're able to watch it being born, right? And it's starting to structure itself. The website preview, you'll see in that one pager the founding members, the people who are coming together to make that happen. And then the ask, the join us, the invitation. You can be a part of this too. And I just got to say, this is such a bold and courageous thing to come together like this, right? You'll see what Susan is also doing, what we're all doing, whether we know it or not. But the pro-social research behind all of this, and that is tons of it. We are living out exactly how humans best organize and how we are created to organize. So Susan is also showing a lot of what we're talking about today about the creation of boundaries, that there are boundaries that start to form in this human process. So you see the members, they stay who they are, but they're working together. And they're recognizing that those core principles are part of the edges, but it's also part of the value system, the ethics by which organizations are forming. And so, also coming up in our announcements, um, our next action lab. So we continue to, kind of breathe in and breathe out together in collaboration. But it's going to be on aging, aging adults and caregivers and what that means, right? And it's the coolest thing on the planet because we're all aging every day. We're getting older, you know? And so that next Action Lab is July 15th from 9 till noon. And we'll be getting more and more of that information out, partnering with the San Antonio Area Foundation, All Hearts on Deck, SALSA, which is on the San Antonio Senior Adults, and coming together. So put that on your calendar, which is also leading to some really monumental work. And I can't wait to share some of the research that's happening behind it. Even Doug doesn't know. But for Pathways to Hope Mental Wellness Conference in August 28th and 29th, make sure that you are marking this. We are creating a movement as we come together, both in learning and awareness, but also what we're going to be hearing about today again is in voice, right? And going out what we were for, protesting that voice in the world in very creative ways. And so I want to introduce my friend Peter Bella. We are working together again. We came together with many other San Antonians some years back and forming a collaboration about sustainability, our environment. But Peter, much like many of us, find ourselves in different places collaborating. And, you know, the research is also showing that some of the largest number of collaborers are people who are in the aged bracket, right? That we continue to, as we grow older, carry those values, deepen those values, and root them in the world. So Peter is going to be sharing with us today, and I'm going to pass it to him. 5051. I had never heard about it before, and that's where we grow together as we hear more about each other. So Peter, I pass it to you because I'm starting to echo.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much, everybody, for giving me this opportunity. I will now share screen and we will be on our way. So, very quickly about myself, I am a longtime activist, used to work at the Alamo Area Council of Governments doing environmental work, and environmentalism remains my mainstay. So, on to 5051. On the right, you see the symbol that is the national 5051 emblem. And to the left, you might guess it's the more local San Antonio chapter, I guess you'd say. Sharing this common 50 protests, 50 states, one movement. That's what the 5051 stands for. I learned about 5051 here in San Antonio last May 5th, 2025, when we had a gathering of protesters outside City Hall to speak out against the firing of federal workers by the Doge. Everybody, you'll remember Doge, right? So there's just a ragtag group of folks who all got together because we realized that this is not the start of something good. And that's when I joined 5051. What we are is a owner-owned and operated grassroots organization against authoritarianism and pro-democracy. Those are kind of the wide boundaries within which we seek action and change. Change through community building and education especially. Yeah, we do protests. Yeah, we do community events. And that's how we reach out to people. And our values, just real quickly, again, we embrace everybody who is finding reason to be unsettled by what is happening politically at the national level. And I like to say you can throw a stone in any direction, you're going to hit somebody who's got some reason to be unhappy with what's going on in Washington. Nonviolent, we're always nonviolent direct action. And we don't harbor non-violence. If somebody gets out of line, they leave our organization. Inclusivity and accessibility. We want to create that space. Excuse me. Well, we want to create that space where everybody flourishes. and de-escalation and conflict resolution, again, we not just non-violent, but in situations where there is conflict, we try and find a way to work with people and listen to people. And do you notice two things? You'll notice that I would think folks at the intersection would notice how much there is in common with your sort of overarching key spiritual guidelines, and it is also antithetical to what Trump is doing. Enough said. But we get serious, but we know how to have fun. So you get the idea. That was during a march about a year ago, an anti-ICE march. And this is actually the same day in a different location within the same place.
Hundreds of protesters take to downtown San Antonio tonight, a protest against ramped up ICE operations nationwide, carried out under the orders of the Trump administration. Texas National Guard members sent by Governor Greg Abbott entering the Alamo before the protest. State troopers blocking every side, telling our reporters they are prepared should anyone try to enter or deface it.
So don't you know what a relief it is that we've still got defenders at the Alamo? Anyway, one of the other aspects of 5051 SATX and many other places in and out of the 5051 movement, we've got what we call a visibility brigade. You'll see the center image, this small image. We get on bridges and we unfurl banners and we make noise and we wave at traffic. And about once a month we have what we call a glow dance bridge, which is where we get on these bridges and let's make sure that sound is off because that's noisy. We go into the night with loudspeakers and lights, and it's quite a lot of fun. And I just like this one image of the dancing shark on a bridge with a sign that says, "Bridge may ice in cold weather." It's just, I don't know, appeals to my sense of humor, I guess. And a spin-off of Visibility Brigade is the Silent Brigade. This is where we simply stand and witness what we see happening with, as you can see, very simple signs that are like bumper stickers as far as what's going wrong. This is, I think, one of my favorites in the sense that we go down on the Riverwalk. We go everywhere in all kinds of public places because it is unquestionably nonviolent. It is silent. We have microphones and bullhorns in the street when we protest, and we also do this. And the silence and the sobriety, the sober quality of what it means to march with these signs really pretty much gives us a passport. We can go anywhere we feel like going, and we're not, people look at us, well, that's what they're supposed to do. And I'm sure that everybody in this group understands what mutual aid looks like. I'd be surprised if there were folks who didn't. And this is something else that 5051 SATX does. And finally, about our people, you can see the bulleted list. That is actually a bullet list taken from a volunteer intake form that's online, so that if you want to join us, if you're interested in what we're saying and how we're acting, you get on that intake form and you check boxes. Which of these are the ones, which of these interest you? So, for instance, I'll just point out the floater. They sort of help when we're in a big rally situation. We've had as large as 10,000 people at a rally, right, in Travis Park downtown. So they sort of help orient folks and say, here's the first aid table. Let me tell you about 5051, etc. And that chanting, that's people actually on bullhorns walking with the march, saying, leading the marches. Um, Photography, medic. We've got a medics tent every time we've got a medics tent. Um, so that we have had incidents where people typically, they faint because it's hot. We've had some very, very hot days when we've had the marches that are downtown in Travis Park. And we promote ourselves on Facebook and other social media. So that is my presentation, short and sweet. I take questions, or you can move on in the agenda, whichever is what is most likely for you.
Yeah, I'm sitting here talking and I don't have my mic on. Wow, Peter. Here's this echo happening. You have really come a long way in this storytelling, which is what we talked about. And when I say story, about telling what's going on, because you just did that in like, I don't know, 8 minutes maybe. And that's what we were talking about last week too. Like, how do you tell your story so people know it's compelling, they're invited in, could be a part of it. But this at the intersection isn't, in one sense it is, people gathering together of like mind, and the like mind is becoming a better community, a better world, whatever it takes. But we are also very different people, right? We act in the world differently. We might not agree on policies or where we are on the spectrum. We're all on the spectrum, right? But that's precisely the point. What brings us together is, that we all are concerned about and want to contribute to the best we can be in this world and to the future. So like I said, I did not know about 5051 before. And next week, I hope we hear from Sisters, which is also something I've not heard about before. And anyway, I want to open this up. Let's see if we have any questions in chat. But I encourage people not to be afraid to engage this conversation, even if you might feel differently about it, precisely if you feel differently about it.
And I don't bite. We're on Zoom. Don't worry, I can't bite.
That's right. That's right. I love the creativity that you express with 5051.
And that's
and
something.
having the fun, but the banners and the glow, it is just so creative and fun.
So let me just throw in on that, because one of the things I did not do in the PowerPoint, I could have loaded it with all kinds of posters and events and videos. There is so much going on, but part of what is true about 5051 also is that there's a lot of open space. Last Sunday night, Trump's birthday, down at the Friendly Spot, we had a watch party for a concert that was put on by Committee for the First Amendment, which is Jane Fonda and a whole list of celebrities, well, musicians and entertainers basically. But the idea was that they had a watch party for this concert promoting the First Amendment freedom, and we took it on. That is, I said to Alex, they had a 5051, hey, look, I'd like to do this at the Friendly Spot. I'd like to sponsor a 5051 watch party for this event. He said, sure. So we do this just as there are sort of pop-ups that social media helps create for who knows what, all kinds of different venues. In the same way, 5051 is very open to experience and open to trying new things. So, and the one other thing I'd like to comment on is the idea of the value of this collaborative action network, BearCan, that we're trying to launch right now, is that the communication within 5051 and in the wider community takes place via Signal. Well, if you happen to have been invited into a Signal chat, or you ask the right person about it, you can get into the chat and then you can find out things, or you can look on social media. But I think that's extremely cumbersome, and it's not at all pushing. It's not at all putting information out in the community. It's, you have to know who to ask before you can ask. And I think that's a real royal pain. So I'm glad to see that's why I'm pushing with to help with the creation of the network is because it just makes sense. Um, that's all.
Um, it's just a very exciting thing. Where did this kind of start? Do you know, Peter? Like where did 5051 kind of get its?
It was basically when Trump came in. I should also add that we're close partners with Indivisible. Indivisible is an anti-Trump group that started just before Trump's first inauguration, and it was actually started by D.C. staffers up in Washington D.C. Congressional staffers who recognized what Trump represented, and they themselves formed a group they call Indivisible, and they actually wrote a pamphlet on their resistance movement. When they started, that was something that did spread, and it sort of helped spawn other groups, and 5051 is part of that. No Kings is actually a separate organization. In San Antonio, 5051 is pretty much the general sponsor and generational side of No Kings protests. We've had three amazing No Kings protests that are thousands of people attending in San Antonio, and 5051 has been the where that takes place, where the organization takes place, getting Travis Park or Main Plaza or wherever, looking at sound systems, looking at organization for peacekeepers, the safety officers, etc. All of that. That's what 5051 started as here in San Antonio. So it was both spontaneous in the sense that I didn't know about 5051 on March 5th, 2025, when I went down to City Hall. I was just unhappy with what Doge was doing. Um, but there were Alex Svela and Sarah Ramirez, who were the two co-founders of 5051 in San Antonio, were there. And I actually had my sound system back then. And I was promoting what they were doing, and we got together, and that's where I started. So I think it's all the 5051 chapters, wherever they are all independent in the sense of there's no funding stream, there's no organizational. The only thing we really share is when there is a large date, a national date for action, like the No Kings have been. We coalesce around that. But beside that, we're just doing our own thing.
So I want to invite everybody too. First of all, somebody else have a question or comment? Okay.
I love the idea. I think we need more organizations like that that bring a voice that are heard when things in the city happen, and we can stand out in front of you know the stairs of City Hall in order to make a statement. I think we're in a day and an age right now where when you look at the political landscape, uh, never in my 63 years of living have I ever seen such a separation of people based on parties and based on ideals. And just to hear people say the things that they say, about a certain person, that he or she could do whatever they want and I'll still vote for them. And, just kind of seeing how far it's gone, right? And kind of just, trying to grasp an understanding of how did we get here, right? I was watching this thing last night on Vice, and they were talking about the state of Idaho, that there's these groups of people that were kind of formed, but they're kind of more like in Trump's realm, um, that are putting in militias, together. Because in these states where Idaho, Montana, I mean, those are states where they're not very populated, right? And it's a lot of woods and it's a lot of, land and a lot of places to hide. And this whole Vice thing was talking about how these people have come together. They're moving from states all over the nation to come to this area, and they're basically forming a militia. For Armageddon is basically what what they're talking about in this Vice episode. And if we're not informed about these things, and if we're not, 'cause a lot of this stuff that doesn't show up on regular ABC, CBS, NBC, because all these you know. medias are owned by one person, BlackRock and all these other guys. There's so much to what's going on that I think people just have zero idea of what's going on.
And that's
It's
why
just,
we do like at the intersection.
yeah.
So
So
we know more of what's going on. I'm going
Going
to
to
echo
echo
again,
again,
but
but
I'm
I'm
going
going
to
to
invite
invite
all of
all of
us to
us.
think for a moment, not think, to what are you feeling inside? That's my question to everybody who's watching, right? At this moment, and having this conversation, we need to learn how to make these conversations happen, right? And live in them. And we're doing it right now. We're not thinking our way into a new way of being, we're doing it. We're having this conversation. So I really want to invite people who are feeling, talk about what that is. I'm feeling, so I can start with that and model it. I'm actually feeling excited because I know people who are here with us this morning. I know we are the people. When we start making these people or those people, then we're not in the space that's going to help us all heal. And we've all been those people, us people. We all are that, right? So what excites me about this conversation this morning is that I know we have people who feel differently about this particular conversation than what we're hearing. I know we're here. And that makes me very excited. Whether you're able to speak about it or not yet, I want to invite you to do so. But if you're not ready, you're not ready. But I know we're here. And I'm excited about that because that's how the world's going to heal. But more specifically, that's how San Antonio is going to heal. And that's how we each are going to heal, is by being open to those, to our differences. And that's what makes our country what it, in its goodness and bestness, is that we're able to speak no matter what that is, right? And we have that right as a human. Um, I want to give an example, though. It's 8:28. So, Peter, thank you for that. We're not finished, but thank you for that, the basics of all of that. And Martha, I'm wondering if I can put you on the spot, but next week we hope to have Reese Sisters with us. Could you give
Yes.
us a one-liner or two about who Reese Sisters is?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you lovely.
Okay. Because I can hear you and everyone else, but I can't hear Peter, and I can't figure out why. But you know the word resist. And there's a group of women in the northwest side of Bexar County who were having salad get togethers. And as they had salad get togethers, they started talking a little bit about politics. And they reformed themselves from the Salad Sisters to being the Re Dash Sisters. And they're an interesting group of people. I clearly they lean progressive, but there's quite a range of political opinions within that group, but with the recognition that they have a common cause now.
So that will be exciting to hear from salad, from salad to cysting. What I still haven't looked at what that root cyst means. Somebody might know, and that would be great. So
Oh
I,
well,
I
it goes from resist to sisters, re sisters.
isn't that something?
Yeah,
Moving,
very clever.
yeah, very clever. But that's also how, the evolution of words, right?
Yeah,
Is that how we take the words and we move them into new meaning, or really ancient. Sometimes we find out that what we, sisters, wow, that just opened up a whole bunch of stuff in my head, and how it's could be the initial formation, right? But we're revisiting it, and always, you know, well, we look at revolution, right? And it's re-evolution, right? So, part of who we are. I want to take a moment um, and look into chat. I hope that you can see it. Scroll back, up, whatever. I never know which terms to use. There's a great job, Peter, uh, from Sammy, and there's a registration link for Pathways. Thank you, Doug. But I also put in there at the intersection. When I talked this morning about how we organize as humans, build structure, but we also have, like boundaries, and that is also based in our ethics and values. And so even in this past week, and I could put up a third rendition, or the first one, but at the intersection itself, and we've been at this since 2020, but or is it 2022? 22, thank you, I think. Um, but realizing even the intersection and what we're doing. So in chat, I put two renditions of something we included in the e-notification about the intersection, and that's been evolving just this week between Bill and myself of what is the intersection, and not what we think, but what we have been trying to grow into, but maybe haven't articulated in words. So we're getting closer at the intersection. I'm reading that last one. The latter has always been about education and conversations, about action plans and collaboration, compassion, and our interdependence. These conversations always, whether you know it or not, always include people who experience action and policies differently. I know it because I know the people who are here, and kudos, congratulations to all of us for doing that. That is the point. We are here to understand and know each other and intentionally find the collaboration we need in order to thrive. And right now, I would even put in order to survive. This major piece of research I've been referring to is called pro-social research, and pulled together initially by observation alone by Nobel laureate Elinor Ostrom, and her work was just simply observing humans, and if left alone, how might they organize? And she came up with 8 core design principles. And we're living them out right now with this new collaboration, Bear-Can, in front of us. We're watching it happen without people telling people it has to happen this way. People are doing it. And what that research, a lot of money has been poured into it by like Templeton Foundation, just lots of money into the research to go back as far as it can historically. So even through history, and basically has debunked the survival of the fittest, and that the reason the human species has survived on the planet is precisely because of we're social beings and because of our collaboration. That's why we're still here. And that, if I were in another session, assembly of people, we'd say, hey, I'm into that, right? But we should celebrate that. It's those kind of stories, though, that generally don't write history, and generally don't make the headlines. But I would suggest to you that we're re-evolving, and more people are co-laboring together, because now we have the science as well behind it, and we can go, oh yeah, that's what we've been doing. Look at that. We've been coming together. people find hope when they come together. And in that coming together, they tell their own stories. And our country is formed on we can all tell our stories, share them, and honor them. And we're trying our very best at the intersection to do that. Any thoughts or questions in my ramblings, in what Peter shared with us, in what Bear Can is doing? We've been getting some hearts and thumbs up here today. I really hope in this effort towards movement, because, yeah, that we keep telling others about the intersection and invite them into this larger conversation. I'm even working, we will find that in this research, how important communications is to the process and how we communicate. I'm really challenging myself to get the information out about each intersection earlier in the week, to communicate it so that the networks, you, us, we, that get the information also have a couple days to invite other people that you feel and need and know into this conversation and what it's about. And there's really not a better word than conversation. We talk about communication, and that's the same root as community, by the way, our common unity. So communication is very important to our community. Conversation, if we break it down, is con with verse. So conversation is about being in a song together, coming into sync together. We don't, there are different parts of when people sing together. There are tenors and altos and sopranos and baritones. Our vantage points, how we think about things are different, how they sound. But when those start to come into verse together, we get more movement. So, Martha, you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm going to put Peter on the spot here. As you were talking, it made me think about the governance team that we've organized for Bear Can. And one of the things that we've put so much energy into, and we're continuing to figure out how to do this, is to be as inclusionary as possible. Because even though there are a lot of, all of us by definition are resisting the political situation at this time, we have a lot of different philosophies and methods in going about it. And we want to be sure that we're able to manage those differences and not let that become a barrier in working together and organizing toward this common cause. Can you elaborate on that, Peter?
Mm-hmm.
We are trying to finalize an invitation to join Bear Can that is both an invitation and necessarily must be a description of who we are, what we are. And part of the trick is the conversation about including and excluding. Including is pretty easy because we have a few nonviolence, separation of church and state, support for democracy. We have a few guidelines that show what we seek, show what we want to have represented. And I mean, to me, I am very open to everybody and their uncle, no matter. We've got people in the environmental community. I've been asked to help invite people from the environmental community into the network. And we've got people like Bare Branches. They plant trees. They're very pro-tree. How does that figure with pro-democracy? It doesn't, but it doesn't have to. The point is, we have very few exclusionary elements, such as if you are a group that as a group you are anti-free speech, if what you're trying to do is shut somebody else down, then that's not a quality that we're going to willingly accept. And we got into discussions about what that means. In other words, let's say that Texas Freedom Foundation or Patriot Front or one of those groups that are probably likely to be characteristically either white supremacist or tending towards violence, or when we find that they are difficult for us to accept, then the idea of, well, aren't we being troublesome in our own rights? Aren't we excluding people because we're talking about free speech? So the qualifier is the idea that if somebody wants to exclude a group for a reason, that's not saying that the group that wants to create the exclusion is themselves exclusionary. So the point is that we're trying to put those guardrails together such that it is a consistent set of operating principles for inclusion. But again, the point really is to make it as very wide as possible and not to exclude people. And I think that we will find that we will, because all of us in the network at the moment are pretty much activists. I think that I think that we will find that we are most attractive to other activist movements. And that's what we want. That's what we want, an easy communication system, because like I was talking about 5051 SATX, they rely on Signal. Well, that in itself is exclusionary in the sense that you have to be a member of the Signal chat, you have to be vetted to get into the chat, blah, 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 blah. We want it as broad as possible, and that's something that we seek to do and are writing into the rules of the road for the group.
So back into, how you're structuring and governing and it's 8:42, so we only have a couple more minutes. But Martha, didn't you also tell me there's another group that's called Support and Defend? Something like that? Could you give us a one-liner or so about that group?
Okay, I'll try. Support and Defend is a group that I organized about a year and a half ago to take advantage of the trust that veterans generally have in the community to explain the constitutional use of the military and why somebody might want to disobey an illegal order.
Fascinating. I think it would be even more fascinating to have, one of the intersections on Support and Defend.
Yes, I was thinking about that, and I can deliver on that.
Okay. I just, the whole women, sisters, right? But then veterans support. I mean, this is, at least for me, it's really stretching and exercising my brain and heart and how we move about in the world. I think it pulls into that phrase, we're bigger people because of it, right?
Yes.
But our feet are planted, hopefully, on the ground, and that we are all in this together.
And if I may, I would just add that when you talk about women, when I look around the NGO groups I know, some of yourself, Martha, other women, the women leaders are, let me put it this way, in the best NGOs I'm thinking of, including ACT for SA, Party for Socialism and Liberation, I could name more. The idea being that they are led by women, and they are the strongest and the best organizations. Not to exclude men, I happen to be one, but the idea of women's leadership is a very potent force. And I'll also say on both sides, that is, Turning Point USA is led by Erica Kirk.
Wow. And on that note, It's 8:45, and we do promise to close by 8:45. Thank you all for being with us this morning. Stay brave and courageous, working from your heart. This world needs each of us and all of us. We're all in this together, whether we like it or not, right? But we've got to come together. So thank you for being you. Thank you for being San Antonio with me. And we'll see you next week at the intersection.
Thank y'all. Have a
Bye now.
blessed week.
You too.